penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio,
your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Are we live? Are we live? Maybe we should wait for some more people to show up. Love that on the live shows. Wait for some people to get in here. What do you mean wait for some people? Start the show. Start entertaining people. Act like you've been here before. We've sure been here before. Rebel Force Radio, this week's show coming at you, as we said, live, completely unfiltered, where you, the listener, are going to drive the conversation with your phone calls. If you're listening to this on delayed podcast, my question is why? Why aren't you subscribed to Rebel Force Radio on YouTube, where you'll get those notifications about when we're going live, or following us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook? So you should have known, and you should have been here. But we got lots of people here this week, so grateful for all of you. And, of course, always grateful for the listeners of the live shows and all our shows on delayed podcast. Appreciate it very much. As we said, there's really no agenda other than to hear what's on your mind. There have been a lot of there's been a lot of conversation brewing over the past couple of months since we did the last one of these. So interested to hear where you stand and what you're thinking these days as a Star Wars fan. Of course, here with me, as always, to do that and so much more, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. So glad to see you guys. Everyone's loading up the chat with all sort of interesting chut-chuts. I'm seeing a lot of chut-chuts in there. Boy, Jason, I got to tell you, I know you just sort of casually introed a show with chut-chut, but that just launched a whole thing amongst Star Wars fans. Everyone is greeting each other with chut-chut and hearing chut-chut in return. So chut-chut, everyone, and welcome to RFR Live. Always exciting to do these live shows because we never know what we're going to be talking about. Usually, Jason, you and me have a pretty decent idea of what we're going to talk about each week on Rebel Force Radio. Now, there's always tangents galore, and that's part of the joy of conversation. But in this case, we turn it over to our friends in the RFR audience, listening to us live, or watching us live, I should say, via YouTube right now. We already have Chris throwing in a super chat. Swank, beware the bed snakes in Padme's bed. Here's some cash to pay someone to suck the venom out. Is he speaking code? Chris, are you speaking code to Mr. Swank? What am I missing here, Jason? Can you interpret that for me?
Beware the snakes in Padme's bed.
Yeah.
Man.
Code.
I don't know that I would mind. I think it would be worth it. I gotta say, I'll take my chances with the snakes. But I think what he's referring to is, for those listening to the show, I am in Padme's boudoir.
Oh, I see. Your backdrop.
My
there
backdrop.
Is,
Yeah.
But so, no, I mean, I shouldn't theater the mind. That's actually where you are. I see R2 rolling by behind you.
Yeah.
And the snakes, though he means those, that millipede, that big fat millipede. That was
if he would have said bugs or the millipede, see, maybe he thinks that they're snakes. And who's to say they aren't? I don't know. I always thought they were some sort of like larva. Or I don't know. They just had that kind of creepy.
They was millipede. Now listen, I'm glad he brings that up because I am coming off of a great conversation about Attack of the Clones with RFR VIP Edward Ramaska. And we talked episode 2 for about an hour and a half, most recently on RFR Q&A. RFR Q&A number 59, Attack of the Clones Appreciation. That episode is only available at RFR on Patreon. And you can become a patron and get access to that show for just $1. $1 gets you in the door, and you're listening to 59 episodes of RFR Q&A. And plus, there's all kind of cool stuff happening over at the RFR Patreon group. So become a supporter, support RFR, and you get all kind of great bonus audio and weekly video if you sign up for RFR All Access.
Yes, I was just trying to. I'm a little late on the draw here today. Here it is. Attack of the Clones Appreciation over here on rebelforceradio.com. What the what? What the what? I had this all set up. No, it just.
What?
Oh,
what are you talking about?
The page blew up on me. That's all.
The page blew up.
The page blew up. I had it all sized and ready to go. There it is. RFR Q&A number 59. So as Jimmy said, that's behind the Patreon paywall, but it's well worth it. And the feedback that we continue to get from our Patreon supporters is just it's unbelievable. So many have said kind of the same thing. Oh, we've been listening to you for years and years and years. Always considered jumping on the Patreon wagon, but never did. And now I'm really glad that I did. So if you have questions about what that experience is like, you can always go over to Facebook and the official Rebel Force Radio group. There are a lot of Patreon members there, and they can give you an idea of what to expect. You know, an unbiased opinion to see if it's worth it. But we're here tonight to hear more from you. We want to know what's on your mind, so we're going to put the number up on the screen, 708-866-1737. We have our dutiful call screener working with us. Tyler
Page.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing very well. That's not Tyler. Tyler's right here.
It looks a little bit better than me.
So do we have any callers? We have anybody? It looks like we've got one so far, but we just got the number up. So give us a call, 708-866-1737. Our first caller, did you put him through the ringer?
I did. I put him through the ringer. He's been screened. He's ready to go. So he's
Has he been? I know he's been screened, but has he been vaccinated? That's all I really care about. Has he been vaccinated?
I can't talk to that.
All right, and I don't think we're legally allowed to ask. I think that's the way it works. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's see who we have. This sounds like a familiar voice and name. Hello, Eric from Phoenix, I presume.
Hey, chut, guys.
Chut. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for taking my call.
Always. Great to hear from you. So what's on your mind tonight? You're the first caller, so no pressure.
Yeah, I haven't collected a ton for the last number of years, but one of the things that I've really liked that have been extremely hard to find, I know, Jason, you know this, were those retro figures.
Yeah, the vintage retro. Yeah.
Yeah, the ones that are basically copies of the ones we grew up with as kids.
Yeah.
And I really love those things, and I want to get your guys' thoughts. I would absolutely love it if Hasbro released all of the original action figures up through Power of the Force in that carded retro figure style, and then made those available through all the regular retailers so we could actually stink and get the darn things. And then number two, go through and pick up ones that should have been made in the original line but never were. I mean, things like, the Rebel Fleet Trooper, I always wanted that as a kid, a Sand Trooper, things like that, and maybe make those exclusives through some of the retailers, conventions, what have you.
Yeah.
It just seemed to me those were extremely hard to find, and I got to believe for the adult collector, there'd just be a ton of folks that would be interested in those. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, well, they were hard to find. You had to look in the men's section at Target, like the men's clothing section, to find that first release, for A New Hope. Those were put out. They were at first a Target exclusive right around Father's Day, like I think 3 years ago, something like that, 2 or 3 years ago. And they were exceptionally hard to find. The Empire Strikes Back. There were a few of the Empire wave that were kind of warming the pegs a bit. But of course, the big ones, I'm looking over here, I've got them on my wall. So you would occasionally find the Hoth Leia. Lando, sadly, was a bit of a peg warmer, and Han Hoth. But Yoda and Boba Fett, they were hard to find, and Bespin Luke, extraordinarily hard to find. Here's the problem that I have, Eric. I don't disagree with you on principle that they should do this. But I think the reality that we have to face is that we're not going back to the glory days of 2008, 2009, 2010, when they were releasing 100 or more figures a year. I think that we're going to be lucky to get, at the rate they're going, half that in a year. Maybe a third of that in a year.
Yeah.
So to get through all of those would be difficult. I yes, on the one hand, yeah, that would be great, but I wish they would just do the unfinished business. Give us the characters that are, the ones that we should have gotten or would have loved to have gotten when we were kids, so that they can go right alongside our vintage figures. It's so much fun to put your Tarkin right inside, a display of your actual classic vintage figures. Now, I do feel for the people that, whether they weren't born at the right time or it's just beyond their price range to go back and get some of the vintage figures now. But if you have them, it's a lot of fun to integrate the modern ones with the classics. Jim, I know you were pretty lukewarm on those at first, but what do you like them, or what do you like more, like the stuff that's coming out for Mando or the stuff that's based on the prior releases?
I would like to see more vintage style retro figures, but action figures they haven't released before. New characters. That's why I like this upcoming Mandalorian wave, is that it's all new characters done in the vintage style. That's what I've been wanting. So I'm happy to see them going in that direction. The new ones are great as little novelties and stuff, but nothing beats the originals. And I don't know, I feel a little weird about having those being re-released decades later in pretty much the same exact form they were in way back in the classic days, back when vintage was new. I remember when vintage was new.
But,
I don't like calling it
just
vintage.
Out of curiosity, why? Do you think that they undermine or undercut the value
a little bit,
of
yeah,
yours?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it damages the integrity of the original collectible. The original collectible. It's just a reproduction. It's a facsimile. It's not the real thing. It's fake. So that's why I kind of get turned off by it a little bit.
All right. Well, hold on. I gotta call this one out. This is, if some of you will remember our dear friend John, the prequel hater. We talked to him at C2E2 a few years ago, and this is actually him dressed up as Count Chocula. He goes, when do we get an entire episode dedicated to Star Wars' most important hero, Dr. Evazan? There's two things that John learned from watching Star Wars. The first is that sand people hide their numbers by riding in single file. The second thing is Dr. Evazan is the most important character to the Star Wars galaxy. And try to argue with him. I dare you. Well, that's very kind.
He must have been thrilled to see the character come back in Rogue One for a brief cameo. That was exciting.
He was, but he feels like he was really underutilized.
I do too. I do too. That was pandering. We that was just
only to one guy. He only has one fan, Dr. Evazan.
He really does. He really does.
Yeah.
You don't see that actor out on the autograph circuit ever because nobody would line up except for John, and that actor then would just go insane.
All right, let's got another caller here. I just want to throw in. I do disagree. I don't think that it ruins the integrity of the originals, and when you break them out of the bubble, it is so obvious that they're not the originals. The plastic that they use, like on the arms, they're like almost like Bendums. They're real.
Oh, like rubbery.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I don't think these would survive. I used to bury my action figures in the ground and in the snow, and then you find a couple, in the spring when they would thaw out. I don't think these things would survive that kind of abuse. I think they would completely fall apart. Hey, speaking of Attack of the Clones, Todd from Columbus is on. He wants to talk a little Attack the Clones.
Hey,
Chut,
guys,
chut, Todd. Hey, what's going on?
Hey, Todd.
Hey, before I give you my comment on the Q&A this week, I did want to mention I'm calling you on my brand new Raycons. I just wanted to, say, hey, I always try to take a look at your sponsors and let them know that I appreciate their sponsorship. And I don't buy everything from your sponsors, but but I'll try them out. So anyway, I like these. These are good. Good. I definitely say the Raycons are good to go with. So good sponsor choice.
Well, glad you like them. I love them. I'm actually most of the time I'll actually record the show with those in. Tonight we're trying a little something different with the phone line, so I had to use my wired cans. But yeah, I'm a big fan of those. Big fan.
Yeah, I always have them on
the
me.
Same ones that Jimmy's. Yeah, the ones that Jimmy's showing right there. I think they got the same model. But yeah, good stuff. Anyway, so Attack of the Clones. I love the discussion on the Q&A this week, and so my 2 cents. I loved Attack of the Clones when it first came out, and then over time, I'm probably one of the people that says it hasn't quite aged so well. But one thing that helped me come to terms with it is something we talked about, I think, on the Facebook page months and months ago, is that if you take into the fact that Anakin's been very sheltered, Padme's been very sheltered, neither one of them has any game at all. None.
Yeah.
And that can help explain the dialogue being so bad, the fact that they just don't know how to go on a date. That helps smooth it a little bit for me. So that's my 2 cents worth. But I'm wondering, my real question is around, do you guys have any of the movies where your feelings on them have really changed over the years?
That's a good question. I like the observation, by the way, of how the dialogue or the stiltedness of the dialogue can be explained by what's going on with Padme and Anakin. I think that's good, and I also think that the novelization brings that out quite a bit. Who was that wrote? Was that Stover that wrote Attack of the Clones novelization? I can't recall, but it's very well done, and I think that they do in the novel. I think they do an excellent job of sort of, I don't want to say retconning, but as you said, Todd, smoothing things over a little bit. And yeah, the fact is that on Naboo, if you are chosen to be part of that program, like Padme and Paolo were, to get into government, because in the culture of Naboo, that's what you do if you're, they look to their youth, their young people, to sort of take on those leadership positions in those roles. You're gonna be kind of weird. I mean, let's face it, you won't have a normal teenagehood, and we all knew. We all knew people in our own real lives that were a little off, little odd, because they might have grown up a little bit sheltered. Anakin's a great example. You put them together. I think it makes sense, Jim. No game for those kids. It's all explained. By
their sheer social ineptitude, that explains the George Lucas bad dialogue. In parts, and we did point out during the RFR Q&A that every 100% of criticism of the dialogue for Attack of the Clones gets placed at the feet of George Lucas. People always point the blasters at George when they're talking about the dialogue in Attack of the Clones. But recall that George did have a co-writer, Jonathan Hales. And how much of that dialogue was he responsible for? That would be an interesting interview.
Oh, really?
I would love to talk to Jonathan Hales about that. And because at this point in time, there's been entire books written breaking down the original trilogy and attributing this line to George and that line to Gloria and Hayek's, whatever their names are.
Right. The annotated screenplay.
Yeah.
I'm dying for an annotated screenplay to come out for the prequels.
I would love that. But yeah, so how much who wrote the I Hate Sand? That could have been Jonathan Hales. So we need to research that. But I don't know. I don't necessarily buy the whole lack of social skills because Padme does reveal, of course, that she had a boyfriend. And also, she's a politician, so
he was a weirdo too. He was in that youth government.
He was an artist.
Oh no, he was an artist. That's right.
Yeah, he was an artist.
I must be getting confused. Was there an old beau of Padme's in the Clone Wars? There was.
Yeah, there was. His name was somebody in the chat. Help me. Somebody says let's talk Geode. Let's not. No, his name was Paulo was the boyfriend, and the other one was Clovis, Rush Clovis. Thank you, Mariana. Yes. Rush Clovis. Everyone remembers Rush Clovis. He was featured again in the Lost missions too, and that was kind of a fun episode. But
oh yeah, that's right. He did come back. He did come back. All right. Well, let's. The other question Todd had was: is there a Star Wars movie where your perceptions have changed over the years? Perhaps did you come to appreciate it more? Perhaps come to appreciate it less? I'll go first. I know it's a little soon, but the sequel trilogy for me, I started to appreciate them less and less. I'm not drawn to them. When the prequels, despite all the flaws of the prequels, and there are many, we've discussed them here at length. When those started hitting home video, I watched them constantly. I constantly was throwing them on. Phantom Menace, the VHS, and then the DVD for Attack of the Clones, and then the Revenge of the Sith. I watched them all the time. And how ubiquitous movies are for us. They're on our phones, they're on our iPads or computers. I just don't feel that pull. I really don't. I'll put on Rogue One 10-1 compared to throwing on the sequels. And when I do, it's going to be Force Awakens. It's not going to be the other two, sadly.
Yeah. For me, the one that really is the one Star Wars that I'm currently obsessing over is clearly The Mandalorian. I just can't get enough of that show.
Yeah.
That I'm going back and hitting that 500 times, just like I do with the original trilogy, prequel trilogy for that matter. Something that really connected me to George's movies, the original 6, were during all those years when Star Wars wasn't in production, I found myself, I kept going back to those movies, not just to rewatch them, but to pick all the sounds out of it. So I would be watching the movies, and then I would record, 10 or 15 minutes on just audio only. And then I would take that audio and put it into audio software and start picking it apart, seeing if I could isolate sound effects and stuff. I got really crazy that way. I'd listen to the film soundtrack forward, backward, left channel, right channel only, phase reversed, center channel extracted. I did everything you could do to those soundtracks without actually, You
defiled those soundtracks.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I didn't even have to take them out to dinner. So, but I have yet to have that kind of dig, that exploratory dig into any Star Wars that's followed those 6 films, even the Clone Wars. I always thought, well, I'll go back and I'll pick through all those episodes too. The problem with the Clone Wars is that it's overwhelmingly filled with music soundtrack, and that takes the fun out of it. You want to get that clean sound.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of stuff like that. That's a hobby of mine. Like a lot of people collect action figures and autographs, comic books. I collect the sounds, and it was a crazy thing I did for years and years and years. And my friends, they would all say to me, "What are you wasting your time doing this for?" I said, someday I'll be able to put it to use. You just watch someday. Sure enough, I did. Now, the main reason I did that is because working in radio, I would have access to production libraries. And there would be all these different libraries, Hanna-Barbera, Warner Brothers, Universal, etc. Some just big ones that everyone knows in the industry, like Sound Ideas and things like that. But I was looking in the back of a book. As a matter of fact, I got the book in the other room. I should run and get it and find this ad that really started everything. There was a Lucasfilm audio production library that was available for sale. And I was so curious about it for a long time. I even tried to get some program directors to purchase it for me. But
Purchase
what
it for you?
Well, for the radio station.
Right.
For me, But I just learned that sound effect library, I finally got to see a rundown of what's in the catalog. And it was all just generic sound effects, like wind, water, horse, dog barking,
Stuff
just
from Howard
typical
the Duck, Radioland Murders.
No, nothing like that. No, nothing like.
Not even that.
There was there was no blasters or sabers or anything. Nothing that you could attach to any of the IPs.
Yeah.
It was all just generic stuff. But they built their own sound library. Guys like Ben Burt, whatever. And they would go out and record horses trotting or cars driving, and they would then take those sounds and mess with them. But I guess in their early original raw state, they're still solid sound effects to be used for anything. So they developed a big sound library and then made it available to radio stations and production houses and everything. And you'd have to pay a lot of money to get it. So, but seeing that ad triggered something in me. And I said, wow, wouldn't it be great if I actually did have my own collection of Star Wars sound effects? That'd be wonderful.
So you don't need to buy the Lucasfilm library. Right. You've got it. You've collected it over 30 years or more of.
And so that's really how I started to learn how to, deconstruct the sounds and do all the wacky things we do in the RFR Sound Lab. I mean, that's how it all began. And so naturally, I have this attachment to the original films that goes beyond just being a passive viewer. I feel like I was able to really get under the hood with those. I haven't had that experience with any Star Wars since then. And, maybe if I get some time and I'll be able to gradually go through them all. I have decades to spare still, so I'm not done yet. And but just what fills my Star Wars audio Jones is doing this show. So I don't necessarily feel the need to go into the production studio unless I'm doing something for this show. But the thing I like to pop on a lot is The Mandalorian, just randomly, and Clone Wars. Those are two that I often go back to. I've been feeling the urge to rewatch the sequel trilogy lately, especially.
You're feeling the pull?
A little bit, yeah, especially The Rise of Skywalker. I think if I cram them all in, and watch them now with a perspective of 2021, it might be a interesting experience. Or a different experience.
Well, whatever. I found that sometimes your expectations clearly have a lot to do with how you feel going into a movie for the first time. And when you have that baggage gone, you can look at it more objectively. And a lot of times we'll get the occasional comment say, I don't know why you guys, don't care for The Last Jedi anymore. I listened to your initial review and you loved it. And it's like, yeah, we were coming right out of the thing. I mean, we literally stepping out of the movie and putting the microphones on. But when you start to detach yourself from that initial impression, sometimes things stick, sometimes they don't. I always throw in the example of Avatar. Avatar, for the longest time, was the #1 movie in the world. It dethroned Star Wars. And I guess there are fans. There's some people that cosplay and dress up. Cameron's been threatening to do sequels. I guess they're in some form of production, but it just didn't stick. Some things are sticky and some things aren't. Yeah. So in that case, I want to hit some of these super chats. Thank you, Salvador Dalliances, for $5. Swank, how excited are you that Hasbro is making a Black Series figure of one of your all-time favorite characters, the Green Bunny Jackson? I'm such a sucker for the Black Series figures. I pretty much buy all of them that come out, and it's gonna look great on the shelf. It's gonna be fun to have. I'm happy for guys like Jimmy Mack that are fans of that, but it in no means justifies or in any way makes that character more canon to me or important or it's still crazy.
Well, here's the thing, Jason. I believe you're unqualified to state those opinions because I don't think you've ever read the vintage Marvel comics that featured Jackson.
I've read a few.
Have
I've
you?
read a few.
Have you?
I have. As a matter of fact, you mailed me one.
I mailed you one that was the flashback, the Luke Skywalker flashback, Crucible, which was, I think it was Marvel issue 17 from back in the 70s. And I sent it to you just because it's a story about Luke prior to the events of A New Hope. It's Luke and Biggs and the racing Skyhoppers.
Sorry, who?
And
Luke and who?
Biggs!
There you go.
And so I sent that to you, and then you gave me a bunch of Star Wars stuff, including a 12-inch vintage Lando Calrissian, which I love. You gave that to me. But also within that package was the very same Marvel comic that I gave you a few years ago. So I'm like, oh, I guess Deb doesn't want this around the house anymore. I got it back. So
guilty. I can't get past the design. Although the design, I felt bad because for the fans of that original Marvel run, I thought the packaging that they put out for this Jackson figure, it was like a modernized kind of anime look. I mean, come on, give us the way Jackson looked in those original comics. That's what made the character popular.
Yeah. The artwork is taken from the new IDW comics where Jackson has made some appearances.
Yeah, that's more for the kids, isn't it?
I guess that makes him canon. It is, but what isn't? It's not like any of this stuff is. Yeah, I mean, it's for everyone. But yeah, those are probably a little more juvenile geared. And it's just the thing with the Jackson Black Series 6-inch figure. It doesn't look like Jackson to me. They've made him more like realistic or something. I wish they went for more of the cartoony look of the character because the character is so steeped in a cartoony look to begin with. It just feels like this is more like a realistic interpretation of Jackson.
But that's the direction that they're going with the Black Series in general. So you've got a little bit more of these. See if we can get him in frame here. There we go. So, yeah, they go. If you look at the Rebels cast,
it's like a dill pickle.
But I don't know what is going on. Yeah, he looks a little warty. I mean, he almost looks more frog or I don't know. Looks like he's been hanging around the wrong kind of rabbits, if you know what I mean. It's a little bumpy.
It's like one of those rabbits from The Shining, Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah, it's weird. As if the character needed help looking more weird and out of place. I think he's like that. If anybody watched the Star Trek animated series, if you remember that from back in the 70s, there was a crewman that replaced Chekhov. Chekhov was never in the series. It was some weird alien. Somebody in the chat probably knows who it is, but to me, that Jackson was always sort of that character, and it's sort of from that same sort of era. One more super chat here. This is from Chris. Oh my gosh, Chris, twice tonight. Do you guys think after Bad Batch debuts, we'll begin to see any 3 3/4 animated Clone Wars style figure releases? Huge fan of the Clone Wars figs. Boy, it'd be great. I wish they would. There doesn't seem to be any indication that that's happening. I think what we're going to get is we're going to continue to get, Jim, as you pointed out with Jackson, realistic versions of animated characters or comic book characters. That seems to be the direction that they're going in. If you notice with the vintage collection, 3 3/4 inch, and then the Black Series, particularly with the new Return of the Jedi Boba Fett, it's very obvious. They are like scaled down versions. So it almost seems like they're starting with the Black Series and then sort of scaling them down, and that's becoming the figures that they're putting out for 3 3/4 in the vintage collection. So I don't think the future looks very bright for stylized a la Clone Wars animation or Rebels animation figures. I think they kind of, those, what was it? What was the last animated series they did? Resistance, yeah. Boy, that didn't stick. But those figures stuck around for the longest time on clearance aisles.
But they were very accurate to their cartoon counterparts. They looked screen accurate. They looked just like the animated characters. So maybe I think it's unfortunate that Hasbro is not meeting the demand of Star Wars fans when it comes to 3 3/4-inch figures to begin with. They claim they make more money on the Black Series figures, but I mean, that's obvious. They ship more of the Black Series and they charge double. So, of course, they make more money, but they're just not satisfying. They're not fulfilling collector demand. And in my opinion, they're losing a lot of money. I think it would be very smart, and our friends at Jedi Temple Archives posted an article about this recently. Just for 1 year, do an experiment. Ship Black Series figures along with identical 3 3/4-inch counterparts and ship them out and see who sells. I have a feeling they'll both sell very well. I think Hasbro's missing the boat a little bit here, and I think that if there's any Black Series release, it should have a 3 3/4-inch counterpart. I think that's solid gold right there. Or provide fans with a subscription series where they can get these 3 3/4-inch. So that way you have them prepaid, and you'll know maybe that will determine your the amount of the distribution. How many figures they actually produce and everything. So
yeah, I mean, to me,
that's
right
just
now,
my solution.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's like chicken or the egg. I walk into my retail locations, and I don't see any figures.
I see nothing.
Nothing.
So
the question is, did they not sell and now the stores aren't stocking them? The stores aren't buying them? Or are they not selling because there's nothing to buy?
I just don't think it makes it to retail. I just don't think they're fulfilling the demand. And I don't know what kind of logic they put behind it either. But just for 1 year, do an experiment. Put out Black Series figures along with identical 3 3/4-inch releases of the same character and see where we're at the end of the year. It'd be a fun race to keep track of.
It would be. All right, back to the phones we go. We got Gene from Los Angeles saying, hey, there are missed opportunities in The Mandalorian. Gene, what did they miss? Mandalorian, hey, chut. Mando seemed pretty perfect to me.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Jason.
Hey.
Hey, Gene.
Oh, awesome. Well, it was a great series. It definitely was a resuscitation that I needed after watching Last Skywalker or The Rise of Skywalker. But, in the ending part, I was really excited for it. They did Luke really well. I was really happy with that. But when Baby Yoda was being shot at by Moff Gideon, and Din Djarin or the Mandalorian dived in front of him, I was really hoping that he would have taken one of those shots, and that Baby Yoda would have had to heal him in that moment to really bring their bond closer together.
Well, he did. I mean, he did heal Mando early. I mean, that created the bond.
That's true. Yeah. That's true, but I really just wanted that last moment. Like, it would have just added that much level of intensity to that final moment. Moff Gideon would have got a shot because, he fired pretty rapidly, and for him to dive and basically deflect all those shots with the Beskar was pretty impressive. I was like, oh, he got hit. When I watched it the first time, I was like, oh, he's going to get hit, and Yoda's just going to heal him. And that was really going to be exciting. But, that was one thing. But, I'm pretty emotional with my Star Wars. You put a Yoda death scene on to me, and I'll start crying. So I was looking for that at the end when they were saying goodbye to each other. And I loved it, too, that they took off the helmet and touched each other. But I really wish that he would have just gave him a hug, pulled him real close, and just gave Baby Yoda a good big hug. Then both of them, I think that would have really just pulled that tear out of me. But besides that, pretty perfect. Can't complain.
Wow. How do we feel about the hug? Have we ever seen anyone actually embrace Baby Yoda? Well, other than Jimmy Mack here, he's clutching his His Baby Yoda.
There you go.
His Baby Yoda toy. But have we seen anyone on the show hug Baby Yoda? Because I wonder. I mean, this is just I wonder if it looks weird. Because of,
It might,
because
so
of
small,
being a
you know,
puppet.
you might,
I just wonder.
Yeah.
The,
Where do you hug them?
I mean, it looks pretty weird when
how do you
Jimmy's doing it.
Area, you know?
There was
Yeah,
there's a
there you go.
really
There you go.
there's a really there's a really sweet moment at the end of chapter 15, The Jedi. Those shows we watched last week. When Mando goes to get Baby Yoda to take him to Ahsoka to be trained, and he goes back to the Razor Crest, and Baby Yoda's sleeping, and he sort of rocks him a little bit, and then he picks him up, and Baby Yoda's still just gradually waking up, and he's just kind of cradling him.
Yeah,
That's your moment right there. That's the sweetest moment between those two.
No, I hear you guys.
Yeah,
I hear you guys. That's. I'm really happy in general, though. I mean, like I said, walking out of A Rise of Skywalker was pretty disappointing, and this was the resuscitation that I needed in my Star Wars life. And you guys, of course, always keep it, going. And I tune in every week to check you guys out, and so I really appreciate it. And chut.
Hey, chut. Hey,
Chut,
thanks,
chut.
man. Thanks, Gene. Appreciate it very much. Love the call and good thoughts here. All right, we've got our friend Mariana from Florida. Mariana, welcome back to Rebel Force Radio. How are things in Florida?
Oh, they're doing good. I just finished my class for grad school, and now I'm talking to you guys. So
Oh, congratulations. Is this it for you? In grad school? Or-
I just started my first semester in
Oh,
grad
okay.
school, so.
All right.
Oh, good Lord. It's rough. I will tell you that.
Oh, I have nightmares. I truly have nightmares about some people have those weird dreams where they're naked and there's nothing they can do about it and they run around. I have nightmares that I'm back in school. I mean the worst, and it's hard because I try to give my kids like a really positive outlook about school, but the truth is I hated it. It was prison for me. They just can't find that out. So you guys that continue with your education, I applaud you. But what's on your mind tonight?
Okay. You guys have. I really am looking forward to that Q&A for Attack of the Clones because first of all, my feelings of Attack of the Clones have never changed at all. I first ran into it like we were at a Blockbuster when I was, I think, around the time I think Revenge of the Sith came out, and I didn't know what it was, and then found out it was Star Wars. And then I liked it when I first saw it on DVD, and it was pretty awesome. I was so hooked on it. And I didn't mind the acting at all between Anakin and Padme, and I had a huge crush on Hayden. Still, due to this day, super excited he's coming back.
Same with Swank.
And you guys were talking... what?
He's just saying I had a big crush on Hayden Christensen.
We all know it.
All right, maybe.
Okay, so I want to get to the point was that a friend of mine just sent me this Star Wars the vintage collection action figure, a vintage collection figure of Anakin in his peasant disguise. Like I've never collected these figures before, so I'm like also collecting Funko Pops. So, like, should I maybe switch from the Funko Pops to these kinds of figures? Because I've never collected these before. What advice can you guys give me when collecting?
My advice is just get them both. Get them both. You got your 3 3/4 inch, and then you got your Funko Pops, and they coexist quite nicely. So go for them both.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I do? Here's my line on the Funkos. Now there are a few exceptions, but I typically what makes Funko so great is that they get the licenses for properties that you would that will never probably get action figures, traditional action figures. So that's what I tend to grab onto. So where I've got Funko Pops of like. James Bond, for example, and that's it's a big franchise, but generally you don't get action figures for James Bond. You might get some like premium dolls and things like that. So I like to support those. They released some from Pee-wee's Playhouse. I picked up some of those. Yes, Jimmy Mack holding up Babu Frick. You can get, you know what? Target's full of Babu Fricks, for God's sake. We don't have to buy a Funko Pop. But I will say this about the attack. Wait, does that one talk? He gets a deluxe. He gets a deluxe pop. Oh my!
No,
God.
I don't have a deluxe pop. I have that, but the Babu Freaks, Barry Harmon. He sent this to me.
Oh, that's the one that's
Target
everywhere.
He sent this one to me. It showed up in the mail unexpectedly the other day.
So yeah, I love the Funko for that stuff that you won't like. The Godfather, for example, they released some great Funko Pops for that. The Star Wars stuff I'll get very, very rarely. I usually get them as gifts, and so I'll put them on a shelf here in the office in the studio. But it's funny that you got an Attack of the Clones era figure, because that line, and that's got those cards with the purple backs, and they had like a little scene that was inserted in the back of the bubble. I got to say, those are some of the most disappointing action figures of, I think, the history of Star Wars collecting, because they all had some sort of action. I felt
no. These are brand new.
Action gimmick.
They put out a brand new Anakin peasant. It's a vintage collection. It's brand new. It's on the pegs now. That's what she's talking about.
Oh, that's what you got. Oh, I thought you said, all right, I'm going to blame Tyler.
No, she's not going all the way back
screener.
to 2002. She doesn't have one that old.
I'm blaming Tyler. I'm blaming Tyler.
No, you can't blame Tyler for that.
Just received an Attack of the Clones era figure from a friend. That's what we saw. So that when I saw era, I thought that's what you're saying. So okay, so vintage collection. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. Get those vintage action figures, because for two reasons. One, they're usually the definitive version of the character in plastic form in that scale. And number two, they do increase in value. They are, and I'm not suggesting that you should collect just because of, it's an investment. But if you are going to collect for an investment, the vintage collection, they do hold their value and increase value. So
wow,
I'm all for it. But man, it gets expensive. That Ahsoka Tano vintage, the Clone Wars era Ahsoka Tano vintage figure is going for $300, $400, $500 on eBay right now. So to fill in those gaps is pretty pricey. But more power
that's
to
why
you.
it is a good idea to pay attention.
Get your hands on that one. See if your friend has that one.
They'll put out more Ahsoka action figures.
Pokemon.
Yeah, collect them all. That's right. Mariana, it's always.
Actually, before I go tonight, I wanted to tell you a really interesting fun fact.
Please.
Go for it.
Kind of like between Star Wars and Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I actually found out, I grew up with Pokemon and I loved all the voice acting. Although I actually found out that 2 voice actors for Pokemon are narrating audiobooks for Star Wars. You guys know Mark Thompson and Rebecca
Oh,
Soler?
sure.
Have you heard of them?
Certainly,
course.
Mark. Yeah.
Mark's been doing Star Wars audiobooks for 20 years.
Yeah, and then when I was like, I love Pokemon growing up so much, and then when I found out that he did voices also for Star Wars and for the audiobooks, I was like, what? That's insane. I would love to try to get more of those voice actors from Pokemon on Star Wars. Wouldn't that be awesome? Like to hear Ash Ketchum as a Jedi or something?
All right, we've hit the generational divide at this point, because I don't know no Pokemon, but I tell you what, Mariana, I know you, and if you think that would be cool, then I'm all for it. So that's great. It is always great to hear from you.
Okay.
Please
All
call
right,
again.
good night, guys. Thank
really,
you.
yes, thank you, and thanks for your support of us on RFR. Got another super chat. This is from Ember. Jim Ember is saying, Hasbro seems to be more focused on Transformers the past few years. Just look at the War for Cybertron, Unicron. Star Wars is lacking behind. I think it's a good point, because when you do hit those toy aisles, you see a plethora of Transformers, Marvel Legends. You see a lot. And Hasbro, they've got the G.I. Joe Declassified line, which is a 6-inch scale, and they cannot keep those on the shelves. They've got lots of Transformers product. They have what else do they just recently put out Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters Vintage. They seem to have, and especially with the Marvel Legends stuff, they don't seem to have this is the thing. They don't seem to have a problem getting that product on the shelf. It's just the Star Wars stuff. So to me, the plot thickens. And those of you who follow this stuff and are on the chats when the Hasbro team is doing their live events with Hasbro Pulse, you may know better than me, but I don't know what the latest excuse is, but there is nothing here in Northeast Ohio on the shelves. Whether you go to Target or Walmart, nothing.
I wonder how much Lucasfilm licensing throws a monkey wrench into the works, you know? Because that's, that's something that I know has, their involvement has perplexed game developers and toy manufacturers for years, you know? Yeah. And also they insist on certain characters being made into action figures, prioritizing some over others, and then those action figures don't sell. And there's just a lot of restrictions for licensees when it comes to producing Star Wars merch. And I think that's the big hang-up. With things like Transformers and G.I. Joe, those are Hasbro properties. So they don't have to go through any red tape, really, outside of internal stuff.
Well,
but
you know what?
With Star Wars, they have to go through Lucasfilm. And
here's our buddy Steve Glosson. He's underscoring this, Jim. He says, I think Hasbro leaves Star Wars undone because of the licensing agreement they inherited from Kenner. Joe and Transformers are Hasbro properties, so they lose no licensing fees. So in the case of G.I. Joe and Transformers, they own all the IP, everything. So what they say goes.
So they can be more aggressive. They can make the decisions they think would resonate the best with consumers. Whereas Lucasfilm, you know, they're leaving decisions up to the story group and stuff. Oh, this must be an action figure. Well, I don't know. We already released 5 Rose Ticos. You think the 6th one will sell? No, you got to release it. You have to release it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I think Steve is right on with what he's saying. It's red tape due to the licensing agreement. So I think that complicates things.
All right,
I don't know why Marvel doesn't suffer the same fate, or Ghostbusters for that matter. Yeah. But Star Wars definitely does. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's check in with Chris from Pensacola. Chris, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello. Chut.
Hey, guys. How's it going tonight?
All right.
Hey.
All right. What's on your mind?
Just want to tell you guys, I enjoy listening to you guys. You guys are awesome, and I really just enjoy you guys taking time to talk to us Star Wars people out here, man. That, you know, we love Star Wars so much, and thank you guys for always just connecting us to probably one of the greatest film franchises of all time. So we just want to say we appreciate you guys.
No, thank you. I appreciate you. So thank you so much for calling. You have something you want to talk about? Some Star Wars stuff?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. I'm looking forward to the Obi-Wan series, and I'm just wanting to know what you guys think. How close and how soon are we going to see Hayden Christensen walk around in that Darth Vader outfit as quickly as possible?
You know, simply because of the fact that they've already started promoting Hayden's return in the Kenobi series, I think we're going to get ample Hayden. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing stuff in the very first episode. It's a limited series. So I would really be disappointed if they held him back until like the second half of the last episode. That would be a bummer. So I think just because of the fact that they're already being aggressive about promoting his appearance in the series, I think we'll get a lot of Hayden, and we'll get it early because of the fact, you know, they love to keep things secret. So they preserve the surprise, and they did such a great job with Baby Yoda and Luke Skywalker, but they're not taking that approach with Hayden Christensen, are they? They're letting us know that we're going to be seeing a duel between Vader and Obi-Wan in this upcoming series. Already, They're letting us know. These are secrets they usually keep. These are the cards they keep close to their chest all the time. So why is it different this time? Why do they feel like they need to hype up the Kenobi series? Isn't it exciting enough just knowing Ewan McGregor is coming back to play Obi-Wan Kenobi? That's very exciting. So it doesn't really need that extra push, which leads me to believe that I think Hayden Christensen's going to be something of a regular on the show. You know, despite even though it's a limited series.
All right, well, let me throw.
I think we'll be getting ample.
I'll throw a question out to you and Chris, our caller. We're all assuming, or a lot of us are assuming, that when we talk about Hayden Christensen, that he's going to be Darth Vader. I'm of the persuasion that he is going to likely be, if we see him as Darth Vader, I think it's going to be perhaps maybe a pensive moment or two in the meditation chamber, perhaps in his back to tank. I don't think we're going to see him running around with a lightsaber a la Rogue One as Darth Vader. I think we're more likely to see Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker in a flashback. That's what I think we're more likely to see, which makes me a little more excited. I don't need Hayden Christensen to be in the suit with the mask on. That doesn't.
Well, they've already announced that he is going to be doing just that. They announced that in the December shareholders whoop-de-doo. They said he will play Darth Vader, and we will see a showdown between Vader and Obi-Wan. Kathleen Kennedy herself said that.
Well, she didn't say we're going to see a showdown between the two.
Yes, she did.
She said something about a rematch. Didn't she say a rematch or? You see,
what would a rematch be if it wasn't a showdown rematch? That's just, you know.
Well, you yourself said you can't believe anything that Kathleen Kennedy says. She does.
I did say that.
She does tend to bend the truth.
I did say that, didn't I?
But
this isn't a little white lie. This
now
wouldn't be a little
Lucasfilm
white
also
lie.
considers Darth Vader Anakin Skywalker before he puts the armor on, before he puts on the suit. We've seen action figures marketed as Darth Vader, where it's actually Hayden Christensen, Anakin Skywalker. He becomes Darth Vader.
This could be
canonically.
This could be the full transformation. This could be like the full transformation of him becoming Darth Vader. This is that because we just saw him being at the end of episode 3. He was in complete, heartbroken. I mean, he was literally heartbroken. He lost his wife, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to be able to save her." Now I think we're going to see him change, and you're going to start seeing him go toward more of that aggressive, evil side that that we expect Vader to see. I think you're going to see an aggressive Vader coming up from Hayden Christensen. I think they're going to turn him loose.
Yeah, especially in the wake of the success that the character had in Rogue One. I mean, everyone loved that sequence, just loved it, and it really pushed Rogue One over the top.
That showed him violence. That shows the violence of Vader right there.
But do you need
what Vader's supposed to look like?
But guys, why do you need Hayden Christensen to run around with a mask on, especially when they have to sort of, they have to artificially create the hulking presence. Hayden Christensen's a little on the tall side, but he's not hulking. He's not Bob Anderson. He's not Dave Prowse. So why go through all of that if he's not going to be demasked? I think he's going to be the demasked Vader if we see that. Yeah. I don't think he's being run around with that helmet on.
However, you can't discount all of the. Go ahead, man.
I agree with what he just said. That I think we're going to see him more in the point of him being probably flashbacks, him sitting there without the mask on, and we're going to actually get to see him relive and then you're just going to feel the anger, and then I think you'll see and then I think you will see when they put the mask on, it'll be a totally different character than what it is. I mean, that's what I think. But I just know that they might let Hayden Christensen fight. To let him they may let him fight or they may put him on a strict workout program. They may hook him up with a personal trainer that bulks him up so much that he will be physically, strong.
He's been living on that farm up in Canada for a long time, so who knows? He might be a strapping farmhand.
you can't discount all of the choreography and training that Hayden and Ewan went through together to learn how to duel for the prequels. So some of that must still be retained up here somewhere with both the two actors. And apparently they have great chemistry together when they're doing stage fighting or just about anything else.
Nick Gillard complimented them on their natural athleticism and, exactly what you're saying, Jim.
And commitment. And so those guys have already been through the ringer as far as that goes. And it'd be really interesting to see how they could recreate that.
I don't know if you guys, and I don't know if you guys have saw the, there's some folks on YouTube, I don't know, you may have seen it, but they recreated that fight on the Death Star with a completely different, like a different Vader.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that was fighting. I wonder if that got to Kathleen Kennedy and that got to Hayden. And that's probably like, hey, this is what we want to do. This is how we're going to make Vader be aggressive. In the fight.
He's a little too aggressive. I know the recreation you're talking about. I find that Vader to be a little too aggressive. When you're watching the saber duel, when it's reimagined, it becomes all about Vader. Whereas in the original, the George Lucas version of that duel on board the Death Star, it's really all about Ben Kenobi. So I feel some of that gets lost.
That's a great point.
In this reimagination.
Yeah, and I thought that too when I watched it too.
It's just a little too brutal. Just a little too brutal. I'm not saying that the Rogue One sequence wasn't brutal, but this one, and it's a great little piece of video that this guy did. I recommend people look it up if you haven't seen it. It's the duel between Obi-Wan and Vader on board the Death Star, reimagined by a filmmaker. I think it's called like Scene 38 Reimagined or something like that. It's got a weird title.
Yeah, that's what it's called. That's what it's called.
Yeah. And so, I've seen it a few times.
And here's the next thing I want to ask is, and now this is getting, and I know you guys got other callers and other people, but do you guys think we'll hear James Earl Jones's voice? Do you think we'll hear it, or you think
I think as long as his lungs draw breath, we're going to hear James Earl Jones. As long as he's willing to do it, we're going to hear him.
I mean, he did it in Rebels.
Yep.
And he still did a great job in Rebels.
Yeah, I just saw there was a comment in the chat about him looking a little rough in Coming to America, the sequel to Coming to America.
Oh, I
Coming
haven't
to America
seen that
too.
yet.
He did.
Well, he's older, you know.
I mean, he had some funny lines.
Yeah.
He had some real funny lines. I'm like, I remembered him from the first one because I'm 36 years old, and I remember when the movie came out, and he was like, you may go home now. Good night. And then in this one here, he's like, shut up, Simmy. He's just like comedic. It's like a comedic side of him. So he did look a little bit rough, but I think he'll have the pipes ready.
Yeah, I think. Well,
I see. He said. Peter in the chat says after seeing James Earl Jones in Coming to America 2, it just disappeared. He said the guy looked old. Well, you know what, guys? Let me tell you something about James Earl Jones. The man is 90 years old. You can count on one hand the number of actors working in Hollywood who are in their 90s. Okay, and he sounded great in Rogue One. Yeah. And I think definitely he, if he's up for it, he'll be able to voice the character of Darth Vader. He loves doing that. He just loves it. He loves Darth Vader.
Wonder if he can't. But if he can't do it, what would they do? Would they kind of mimic his voice?
They'll
of course.
Yep, they've got plans.
Nowadays you have the artificial intelligence that can mimic.
That's right.
We heard it with Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian. All of a sudden you have young Mark Hamill delivering new dialogue.
Yeah. Oh, he did do great. Hey, Chris, thanks for calling, man. Great to hear from you. Thanks to a new caller there with Chris from Pensacola, and he sounded an awful lot like Big Steve Glosson. He had that sweet
molasses.
The molasses, that sweet molasses, Southern molasses.
Sweet molasses.
All right, so I think we've got we've got another caller coming up here in just a moment. If you're listening live, we'd love to have you give us a call, 708-866-1737. That's 708-866-1RFR. Always great to hear from you. And, when we talk about James Earl Jones or, any of those actors from the original films, we have to come to terms with the fact. I mean, God bless his cotton socks, William Shatner from that other franchise just turned 90 years old.
Yeah,
we have to accept the fact that these guys aren't going to be around forever, and that they're going to be replacements. Though they can never be replaced. As I've said many times, I think the characters have to endure. They have to be bigger than the actors. These characters are archetypes. They're mythological. They're larger than life. They're bigger than any one human being. They have to be in order to live on. And so I'm all for recasting. I'm all for bestowing the privilege of playing these characters to a new generation of actors. I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah, I mean, Father Time does not stop for anyone. No. I made my dad happy when I told him that I spend top dollar going to see classic rockers his age and older in concert. And that made him feel pretty good. He's like, top dollar, you say? Like, yeah, Dad. Yeah, those Rolling Stones tickets ain't cheap. But he enjoyed hearing that. And it's great to see guys working into their 90s like Shatner and James Earl Jones. It gives us hope. The generation behind those guys, it gives us hope for when we get into our 90s, we'll still be as productive as we possibly can be. So I say, yeah, bring back James Earl Jones as Darth Vader for as long as he wants to do it, because he is the voice. And there's no question about that.
No question. All right, here we go. Randy from Chicago on the line. Hey, Randy, you want to talk about Deborah Chow?
Mm-hmm.
All right, what do you got for us?
Because Deborah Chow is she's been directing, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. She directed a bunch of episodes. In my opinion, my favorite episode is The Mandalorian. And I would just really love to know how you guys feel she would influence Obi-Wan. She's really good at shooting episodes of despair. And really, yeah, so
character
your
study
thoughts on that would be awesome.
Well, I think that she's going to be great. I have no concern about her at the helm of the series. I think that she's an inspired choice, and as you point out, despair. I think that's a key word in understanding where Obi-Wan Kenobi is, where he's living from an emotional standpoint. Everything and everyone that he's ever known is gone. His whole life, everything he's dedicated his life to is gone. And he has this one charge. He has this one thing that gets him out of bed every morning. And that is to make sure that this child is protected so that he can claim his birthright and make right what was wronged by his father. And, it's a wing and a prayer. They don't know anything about this kid. And, when he meets Luke properly in episode 4, it's not an easy thing. I mean, Luke is reluctant to take up. He talks a big game. He wants to join the academy. He wants to go off with his friends and make a difference. But when push comes to shove, he turns old Ben down. Oh, my uncle. So they're hinging all their hopes on this, little baby. By the time we meet him in Kenobi, I don't know, how old will Luke be when we get into Kenobi? Do we have enough of a timeline standpoint? Is that 6
Probably
years after 10 years?
12.
Yeah.
I've heard varying things. I heard the thing that sticks out to me is somebody said the Kenobi series is 8 years prior to the events of A New Hope, but I'm not 100% sure.
So we're looking at a 10 to 12-year-old
Yeah,
Luke
that's what I'm
Skywalker,
guessing.
perhaps.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, what does that do to a person? What does that kind of isolation do to a person?
Is he alone?
Is he alone? That's a good question. Well, there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we assume. That's a good point. There's a lot we assume. What do you think, Randy? Where do you think we're going when Obi-Wan, when the Kenobi series opens up, where do you think we're going to see the venerable Jedi Master?
I mean, I feel like a natural beginning would just be him in Tatooine, probably like looking over the moisture farm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At some point. I mean, that just seems logical. But I mean, I also kind of hope, they do something unexpected. Not too unexpected, but maybe there's something else going on that we didn't see in the background, I feel like, but obviously like Clone Wars and Filoni was really good at like filling in all those things that we didn't understand about the prequels. So I think that would be also interesting. If they take, kind of direction that way as well. So
Boy,
maybe
Filoni,
there's something else.
That's not a small point you make, Randy. Filoni did do an exceptional job of giving the making more sense of the prequels. And he did it definitely on screen with the Clone Wars, but he also would do it brilliantly off the dome at convention appearances and things like that. He rarely seemed stumped, when a convention goer would stand up and ask him a question. Well, why this, why that, and the prequels this and the prequels that, and well, you got to understand that, and he would go in and you would be like, wow, why didn't I think of that?
You could tell he was referencing a conversation that he had in the writer's room or maybe even with George Lucas himself.
Right.
And so he would just tap into those conversations he's had over the years, trying to get down to the core of Star Wars and figure out why X does Y and Y does Z and everything else. And, I mean, we spent a lot of time on this show talking about it too.
Right.
But we don't have access to George Lucas's writer's room. That's what we need, Jason. We need access.
Can you imagine? All right. Hey, thanks, Randy. Appreciate the call very much. Let's check in with, we got Isaac from Maine wants to talk a little Bad Batch. Let's talk some Bad Batch. We've got, we're down to just a few weeks before we get the big May 4th premiere of the Bad Batch. How's it going, Isaac?
Really good.
Good. All right. What do you want to ask about Bad Batch?
And my question was really centered around the involvement of the Jedi in the Bad Batch, because I feel like recently on Mandalorian season 2, we've been seeing a lot of focus on like the Jedi during the Imperial era, surviving undercover, really, going underground. And do you think that we're going to see that same focus in the Bad Batch? Because that really just seems like a prime time to look at, how do the Jedi react, basically immediately in these following years. Or do you think that we're going to get a more like clone-focused story with more little gritty tales, kind of more Clone Wars style, except replace the, of course, the Jedi Order and the Republic with the Empire? Or do you think that they're going to go with the more Mandalorian, rebels, maybe, featuring some remnant Jedi Order that the Bad Batch would team up with?
Well, I believe that the Bad Batch, this is my guess, is that they remain uncorrupted by Order 66, based on the fact that genetically they're just a little bit different from your typical clone trooper, and maybe they weren't instilled with the Order 66 programming. There has to be some sort of loophole that will keep the Bad Batch from becoming clone trooper Jedi killers, because we can't root for a protagonist that is killing off the righteous and good Jedi. There would just be something flawed in that. So there's going to be something that keeps the Bad Batch from turning on the Jedi. And I believe that'll all be established very early in the series, maybe even the first episode, where we understand what's going on with these guys and maybe their overall confusion to the other clone troopers wiping out the Jedi Knights, and maybe they will help a Jedi get to a hiding place, help Jedi find a place in exile. Could be a Jedi we've heard of, and maybe it's not a Jedi we've ever heard of before. I'd like to think that the Bad Batch had something to do with protecting Grogu and helping hide him from the Order 66 massacre, removing him from the Jedi Temple, taking him to safety. Also, I think there's a possibility that the Bad Batch could team up with Bail Organa, meet up with his ship, the Rebel Blockade Runner, as it's still carrying Obi-Wan and Yoda. Maybe the Bad Batch helps Obi-Wan settle down in Tatooine. Unlikely, though. I think that would attract a lot of attention. Or maybe the Bad Batch helps Princess Leia get home to Alderaan with Bail. There's all kind of different directions that we can go in with this thing. But I think it's key that the Bad Batch remain resistant to Order 66.
You know, two things jump out at me, Jim. One is that I think you were the one that said that could the Bad Batch be the key to some sort of underground railroad type mechanism to shuttle the Jedi or Force sensitives to safety, number one. And number two, I think you've also been pretty adamant that, why would they not include the most popular Star Wars character since Star Wars, Grogu, in the series? Something that occurred to me, and by the way, Isaac, really appreciate the call, buddy. Thank you for the question, and please call back again. When we meet Grogu in The Mandalorian, he's at that hideout with these Nikto mercenaries. So you wonder, considering that Mando was a bounty hunter, there's really no evidence that Baby Yoda was being mistreated by these mercenaries, is there? Do we have,
no.
We don't really know. Perhaps they were the rightful protectors going 50 years. Should we assume that, let's just say, that the Bad Batch or whomever it was that was able to rescue Grogu at the time of Order 66, let's assume that they placed them with the Nikto mercenaries. What can we learn, or what do we assume? There's the perception that Baby Yoda was somehow saved by the Mandalorian. We don't really know. He might have had the life of luxury there on was that Arvala 7?
Yes,
Queel's planet.
Right. Yeah, no, those are all great points to bring up. Naturally, we think those Niktos are bad guys doing bad things because we've been presented those characters as members of Jabba's court and everything. So we're conditioned to think that all Niktos are bad dudes. But they could have, maybe they were allies of the Bad Batch and they were helping hide Baby Yoda. We don't know. I mean, they definitely seemed gung-ho on protecting Baby Yoda and making sure that the Mando and IG-11 didn't get close to him. They failed. But, were they protecting Baby Yoda as because they wanted to protect their bounty, because they were expecting some big payday, or were they serving a greater cause? Were they acting in the on the side of righteousness and trying to protect Baby Yoda? That's a great question, one I never considered until this moment, and I like it. And, I hope we don't get our expectations up too high for seeing Grogu in the Bad Batch, but as Jason said, it's irresistible to not include, this guy, Baby Yoda. A cute character like this is dying to be animated. Okay, this guy is dying to be animated, and kids will eat it up if it happens, just as much as they did when he appeared on The Mandalorian.
Well, and if you look at what they did with Seasons of Clone Wars, and they wove they knitted it all so tightly with what was happening in the cinematic universe. I think that's really the direction that they want to go with this stuff. And we didn't see it with Resistance so much, but I think Resistance was a bit of an experiment. I really do. I think at the end of the day, that was an experimental show.
I think Resistance was going in a certain direction, and then it just got derailed maybe after, somewhere midway in production of the first 2 seasons. It got derailed by all the changes that happened to the Rise of Skywalker and where that story was going.
That's right.
So, yeah, I'm not trying to make excuses for Resistance. It was awful. But I think that those guys were really between a rock and a hard place and had to abandon a lot of the ideas they had, a lot of the story threads and plot lines, because the entire direction of the sequel trilogy got sent on a detour. I should say detour. We haven't seen that yet, but hey, that could be coming soon. We just recently got, not to go on a tangent, but I'm going to go on a tangent. Last week it was announced that at the beginning of April, next week, we're going to see some really cool Star Wars TV shows land on Disney+. The 2 Ewok movies that were made for TV, the Ewok cartoon series, and what else are they? Oh, they're putting out the animated short from the holiday special.
And the Gendy series, I think, right?
And the Gendy series. That's the other one I was trying to think of. So that's great news. And it just makes me think that when they're going to make an announcement about Star Wars detours heading toward Disney Plus soon. That's got to be coming soon. There was a very orchestrated leak of that footage that they gave Weird Al, and he launched. And his name's all over that, because Disney went and they pulled any footage or any even screen grabs of that leaked footage. They pulled it off of YouTube videos. And the way I know this is because they made us take it off of our YouTube video. And it said on the complaint, it said Star Wars Detours / Al Yankovic. It's like, wow. So that's what they've titled. They had to have leaked it through Weird Al. That's how they identified it. It's not because Weird Al was in it. That's not why they identify that file that way. So that to me seemed like a very orchestrated and planned leak. There's a reason to it. There's a method to this madness. And I think we're going to be seeing Star Wars Detours in 2021 on Disney Plus. I really believe that. I was just so surprised by that Ewok news. Now, a lot of people are saying, what about the Droids cartoon from the 80s? Where's that? Because that was sort of a counterpart to the Ewoks animated show. I know, Jason, you were eating your sugary cereal, sitting on the floor on Saturday mornings watching these cartoons religiously.
Absolutely. Just waiting for someone that I cared about to show up in one of them. Where's Leia? This will be the episode when we meet Luke Skywalker. I mean, the naivete of, little 6-7-year-old me.
Well, I think a lot of people wanted that.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the Droids cartoon goes, though, where is it? Why isn't that coming out? And I think I understand why they're not releasing it. It's because if you remember in December, Kathleen Kennedy announced that there's going to be an animated Droids special that's going to land on Disney Plus. It's called like a Droid Story or something like that. And it's a collaboration with Lucasfilm and ILM, which really excites me because those guys could be bringing some full-on CGI animation, 3D animation to this series, which will probably, they could make it look like film quality if they wanted to do animation that way. We just don't know much about it. Now, I'm telling you this. The reason why Lucasfilm won't release the Star Wars Droids animated series from the 80s is because they have this animated special that's going to drop maybe later this year. I don't know when. So, because Lucasfilm thinks the fans are dumb as rocks, and Lucas, so much so that they're even making stories where the Star Wars characters are actually rocks.
The fans will really relate to this.
Yeah, they're dumb as rocks. They'll love this. But they just think that we'll get confused between the two Droids animated series.
Oh, I'm so confused.
Because we can't figure it out.
Right.
What is this? What is this Droid series? I thought it was going to be something, a collaboration between ILM and Lucasfilm. This doesn't look like that. And they're watching the mid-'80s droids animated show.
Hey,
But
I do want to throw a shout out here to Dilly248 with a super chat. Will we see Ahsoka in the Bad Batch? Why not? I think Ahsoka has shown up in everything else, so why not see Ahsoka in the Bad Batch? I think it's reasonable to assume.
Well, she didn't have any. She had no interaction with them in the Clone Wars. She was still hiding out in the lower levels of Coruscant when they were out fighting the war with Anakin. Well, at least we don't know if maybe she did an earlier mission with them that happened off screen. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I don't see any tie-in there, and especially since it's sort of hard to figure out what Ahsoka's status is as a Republic general. Put Jedi aside, but as a Republic general, when she re-entered the Clone Wars in season 7, in those final 4 episodes, she did reclaim her military rank of general, despite not being a Jedi.
Right.
So, I mean, we know that the Jedi were generals and they led the clone army, but it nowhere does it say that all the generals were Jedi. And Ahsoka was not identifying as Jedi back then. And so, sorry, Ben, that I insulted your beloved geode. I didn't know anyone, it was considered by anyone, but I'm sorry, Ben. Some tells me he's being a little tongue-in-cheek there. But so Ahsoka was a general. So where does that place her status within the army after the Clone Wars ends? I mean, I guess, they in that final arc, they refused to turn on her because she isn't a Jedi. Isn't that right? Doesn't Rex use that kind of logic with some of the soldiers?
Well,
you don't remember. I haven't seen it in a while myself. I don't
Rex,
remember.
No, Rex really struggles. Rex, I mean, but it's not,
Rex himself.
Yes, and Rex really struggles with it. I think it's more about his character than it is, his intestinal fortitude than it is anything with Ahsoka's status. I think that's a technicality that would not have been caught by the programming. What I do think is clear is that you can imagine after the events of Order 66, Ahsoka would have known about it. She would have had, I think, some of her suspicions confirmed. I think Ahsoka would have probably be considered in her day maybe a bit of a conspiracy theorist. She knew that something was up, something was wrong. The connection between the old Republic and the generals and the during the Clone Wars and the characters like Tarkin and the military industrial complex of the old Republic. She knew that something wasn't quite right there, and so when the sugar hits the fan with Order 66, I think that Ahsoka would have been compelled to go in and help her former Jedi brethren. So if we do see the Bad Batch taking on some sort of role of perhaps funneling or getting these Jedi to safety, I think that's a moment where she could appear and help out. She becomes the fulcrum at some point, so she certainly doesn't give up the fight. So I think that it's more unlikely that I think it's more likely that we won't see her than we will see her, is what I'm trying to say. I think it is far more likely we will.
Oh, you think we will see her?
I think we will see Ahsoka in the Bad Batch. Yeah. It's part of the Filoni-verse. Filoni
I'll give you 50-50 on that.
Ahsoka.
Jawa Films in the chat says that Ahsoka was never a general, only a commander, because of her being a Padawan. So I must not be remembering that correctly. I could have sworn they started referring to her as general in those final episodes of the Clone Wars, but maybe I'm wrong. That's trivial information. It's all trivial information.
Here's a question. We got Antonio from New Jersey. He's wondering, where is Hondo? Would he show up in Bad Batch? Antonio. All right, we've been
shut, gentlemen.
Shut. We've been speculating about Where is Ahsoka? But you want to ask, where is Hondo? Will he show up in Bad Batch or in any of the new shows? Are you a big fan of Hondo?
Of course. And I'm, big fan of Jim Cummings, who does that voice and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, what a talent, right? But I just feel like Hondo is one of those characters that was like so big in the Clone Wars, Rebels, even at the parks, right? To the point where they gave him the Millennium Falcon, which whatever, that's totally cool. But I wanted to get you guys speculation on where we're going to see Hondo. He just feels like he's got to be coming up sooner or later, whether it's Mando or Bad Batch, whatever it may be. But yeah.
All right.
Bad Batch is probably the more likely landing spot for him than a live action Hondo showing up in the Mando. He'd probably be pretty long in the tooth by that point. But I don't know how Weequay aged, so I think the Bad Batch is where you'll see him.
To Rebels. Oh, sorry. You guys go. Apologies.
Go from the Clone Wars to Rebels. It
looks like he de-aged a couple years.
Yeah, I think in Rebels they just made like those horns on his face a little longer to show he's long in the horn, I should say.
Because he's a little bit longer in the horns. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. and he needs a stronger prescription on those goggles, I'm sure. He'll get the prescription will get so strong he'll have those big eyes,
Maz Kanata style, I think is what he'll end up.
Yeah, like the Trailer Park Boys guy or something. But
great reference.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
No worries.
Watching TV with my sons pays off every once in a while. I think Hondo is one of those characters who's really locked into animation, and Clone Wars is his era. Bad Batch essentially being a sequel to the Clone Wars, or a direct spin-off of the Clone Wars. I bet we'll see Hondo. I'll bet the bank on that.
Hondo is one of those animated characters where he's so Jim Cummings. I mean, Jim Cummings is Hondo. It's so much in the voice. And, maybe some people would say, oh, I felt that way about Ahsoka. But no, not in the same way. So if they do a live action Hondo, they got to have Jim Cummings at least supply the voice. He's got to have that. And I don't want a poor imitation. I want Jim Cummings as the voice of Hondo if they're going to do it. I disagree a little bit with J Mac. I don't know that it's unlikely that he'll show up in live action. I think that it helps that he's been established as live action through what's going on at the Disney parks. And we have seen others of his species show up in Mandalorian. So I think we could see him. I would like to see him actually show up. I really would. I'm glad that we've been deprived of Hondo for a little while, but I say it's time to bring Hondo back. And if I had to pick, I'd love to see him show up in Mandalorian. I think he'd be a great anti-hero for Mando, a great nuisance, annoyance for Mando.
There's so many other great characters.
Or even Book of Boba.
Book of Boba, yeah. Now I could see him appearing in that one because that's all about the underworld, we assume. But I just think there's so many great Star Wars characters that deserve a little more time in the sun. And Hondo, as far as spreading the live action, I could think of about 24 characters I'd rather see than Hondo in live action or before Hondo in live action. So maybe I'm just Hondo'd out.
Could be.
I do love the character. Don't get me wrong. I was listening back to some of our old Clone Wars Declassified, and from season 5, and there was an episode with Hondo in there, and he was drunk, and it was hilarious. I mean, we were loving that. That's really when Hondo, I think, started to become a thing with us fans. Is like right around season 5 of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
When he was like really his charismatic-tude was just so overwhelming at that point. They really had nailed the character, and then everyone responded. And I'm surprised to see he'd become so popular that he's the main attraction at Galaxy's Edge. I was critical of that announcement when it was first made because I was like, It's in a very similar way to I'm being critical right now about Hondo being in The Mandalorian. I was like, well, Hondo's great and everything, but there's so many other characters. Why Hondo all the time? Why Hondo all the time? There's ruts we get into with Star Wars. You know? What's the deal?
Antonio, hey man, thanks so much for calling. Appreciate it, buddy.
Definitely, guys.
Want to get to this super chat from Lady Chewbacca. Listen to the Mando commentary. In the Siege episode of Navarro, do you think the character that placed the tracker was Ochi from episode 9? The tracker on...
Oh, okay. So remember the crew that was working for Grief Karga to repair the Mando ship, the Razor Crest. One of them was like Membanese. Remember we were talking about him? And so I think, and that same character also communicates via hologram with the Imperials on board Moff Gideon's light cruiser. So I think Lady Chewbacca is wondering if that is actually Ochi. And maybe. I mean, we've seen Ochi. We saw him in episode 9, and just in that brief flashback, real fast, and it looked like he had cybernetic implants in his eyes, and he had like a Lobot headband on, and but the color of the skin and the texture of the skin looked a little off compared to the character we see in The Mandalorian. It seemed to me like Ochi was more of a greenish color, maybe.
Yeah.
And The Mandalorian was more of an orangish color. But again, we don't know how these species age. Things like, I mean, there's a million excuses you can make for it. But, and then we also see Ochi in the Darth Vader comic series currently from Marvel, and he's wearing a helmet. So you never actually see what he looks like under that helmet.
Oh, what's he doing in that Darth Vader series? Ochi.
He is in a duel with Darth Vader on Mustafar. And
a duel?
Well, a duel, you know, I mean, they're battling it out. And
has he got a lightsaber?
And Vader's at a no, he doesn't have a lightsaber. Okay. They're just having a battle, and there's all kind of crap going on. And Vader's at a disadvantage. Hey, you know what? I'm looking at a picture right now of Ochi from The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And he definitely has more orangish skin. Why was I thinking he had more of like a greenish? He has orange skin. He looks just like the guy from The Mandalorian. I think Lady Chewbacca knows what she's talking about more than I do. She should be hosting this show. But Ochi from Bestoon. He sure looks like that guy who might have been working as a tech for Grief Karga. But you see, we know about Ochi's history. He's a Sith assassin, and he was working for Palpatine even way back in the area between the prequel and the original trilogy. So Ochi goes way back. Why would he be working as a tech for Grief Karga on Navarro? I mean, that kind of, he's a Sith assassin. So I just don't know why he would have that gig unless he was a plant or of some sort. But I mean, how would anyone even know? How would anyone even know that the Mandalorian was heading to Navarro? You know, how would they be able to plant someone in there? Yeah, that's kind of a weird thing that happened. So no, he'd have to be just an agent of the Empire, the one who worked on the Razor Crest. I don't think that's Ochi, but they look similar.
They do.
They do look similar.
They do. Here is Windows with a super chat, $4.99. Thanks very much, Windows. Question about Andor series: will we ever see a young girl or teenage Leia in any part of the series? Looking at Andor, and could we? You know, there's speculation that we could see a young Luke in the Kenobi series. What about a cameo by a young Leia? I've had actresses ranging from Millie Bobby Brown lobbying to play a young Leia.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I think I keep replaying the comments that Lucasfilm made when Carrie Fisher died. where they were pretty strict about saying that they weren't going to recreate the character via CGI or give the role to another actor. But I think that those were comments kind of made in the moment, and specifically about the sequel trilogy films, and not any future spin-offs or series. The character of Leia is so super popular, she's going to be recast one of these days. And so I think I think there's room. I think there's room for a different actress playing a young Leia in a streaming series.
Well, it might be a way to create a precedent, to get...
Well, they've already done that with the Han Solo film. Haven't they?
Well, have they? Yeah, they have, at least from a CG standpoint. Not an out-and-out recasting.
Well, no, I'm talking about Han Solo. The character of Han Solo.
Oh, right. But you know what? There were never any public proclamations about, we'll never, ever sully the legacy of Harrison Ford with another act. There wasn't that kind of posturing. But
do you think Harrison's legacy has been sullied?
Absolutely not.
No,
absolutely not. I don't think that anybody is looking at the Solo film and having it impact Harrison Ford's performance as Han Solo. That's crazy.
No. I think Harrison Ford's performance as Solo impacts Alden Ehrenreich a great deal. But it doesn't quite work the other way around so much.
No, I totally agree. Let's see. Last call for calls. If you have a burning question, we'll put the call out here. Put Tyler to work. Tyler's falling asleep over there. Our call screener, 708-866-1737, 708-866-1RFR. And we'll pop you on and wrap up this week's Rebel Force Radio. Great fun time with RFR Live.
We have a super chat from Windows. I wonder if it's the same Windows from Fanboys.
I think we just did that.
Oh, I'm sorry. We sure did. Sorry, Windows. You get a double plug on this week's RFR. We just talked. We just answered your question. There it is. Yeah,
that's all right.
Layup.
Now here's a question. What about a live-action Cad Bane? I've thought about this. This is from finding this right there. The Duros look weird. I have an issue with. I mean, they look fine, kind of in the background of the cantina, but a live-action version just looks weird to me.
Yeah, I think George Lucas felt the same way when he created the Nemoidians for the prequel era. Something tells me he was considering using a Duros, but it just didn't cut the mustard. And maybe looked a little too fake or weird or whatever. I'm not saying that the Nemoidians were the greatest achievement in the history of film, but they had a little bit more character than your Duros, which all sort of had that same kind of look. That look is kind of like the Close Encounters.
Yep. I was going to say sort
the
of
Close Encounters
like
aliens,
classic alien, yeah,
classic like
alien.
Martian, the classic Martian. That's sort of with the small mouth and the big bulbous eyes and everything. So that's why I think George eventually ended up creating the Nemoidians. Was he was looking at that design and wanting to improve it so it would look decent on screen in 1999 and in the 2000s. So
there's a lot of similarities between the Duros and the Nemoidians.
I think it's been written in the expanded universe that they are related, that they share the same ancestry or something.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap things up for us here on Rebel Force Radio this week for RFR Live. Great time hanging out with everybody. Great questions, great calls, great super chats. Thank you all so very much. If you'd like more Rebel Force Radio, we invite you to join us over on Patreon. Just go to rebelforceradio.com, click on the Patreon banner, or go to Patreon and search for Rebel Force Radio. And we do our best around here, particularly this guy right there, Jimmy Mack, to provide you with additional content that you can't find anywhere else. You can't subscribe to it. Oh, Eric from Phoenix with a last-ditch super chat. Wish we could get a Solo series on Disney Plus. Want to see those characters and stories continue. Great show, guys. Thanks. Thank you, Eric. Always appreciate your support. And I'm 100% in agreement. I think that a sequel, as it were, to Solo would be right at home on Disney Plus as a limited series or mini series, however you want to phrase it. I would love to see more from Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. I'd certainly love to see more from Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. I think it'd be great.
I wanted to see more of him too in Solo, but the thing was shot so poorly I couldn't see anything. Felt like there was a big glob of grease over the screen.
I tell you what, man, I just bought Solo on 4K HDR, thinking, okay, I'm going to put this thing and I'm going to watch it in the best possible format for home video. The next best thing to seeing it in the theater, maybe even superior to some theatrical showings, and still the same problem. Still the same problem with the darkness. It's, whether it's by design or accident or I don't know what it is, but it is a hard film to watch. Now, some of the outdoor stuff is beautiful, looks great, but so much of it is just mired in darkness and shadow.
Yeah. Monochromatic frames and just it's not Star Wars. It doesn't look like Star Wars. I hear a lot of complaints about DC films too, having just a weird kind of muted color palette that just doesn't pop out of the screen at all. And I agree. I fully agree. Put color back into films. I mean, that was the big revolution, wasn't it?
Star Wars. How about some aliens that don't look like pink peach people? Let's get some bold colors on those.
That was an important part of George Lucas's Star Wars, and everyone knows what a profound visionary he was and still is. And I'd like to see a little bit of that being taken more seriously by the current people in charge of the franchise.
For sure. If you'd like to play with us in between shows, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email or record one of those voice memos and drop it at show@rebelforceradio.com. Of course, rebelforceradio.com, the source for all things and everything Rebel Force Radio. And please join us over on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's a great way to keep up with the latest and greatest on Rebel Force Radio, including when we're going to do these live shows and take calls and hang out with you guys for a little bit. Appreciate it all so much. That's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time right here on Rebel Force Radio. For RFR, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember.
Always.
Always.